Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Book Geeks and Wine Freaks. And since we're right here on Halloween weekend, I thought I'd come and chat with you about my favorite novel, Bram Stoker's Dracula. And so on the agenda tonight, just to give you a little rundown of what you're in for, what you're in store for, is we're going to talk about the novel a little bit, my history with the novel, how I got started with wanting to read this novel. Excuse me. We're going to talk about the romance in the novel because I know that's what everyone's thinking about. And then we're going to talk about, and because, I got started with film, we're going to talk about stage and film adaptations. And I won't forget, we're going to talk about, I'm going to tell you the answer to how Dracula got his cape. It's a very interesting little tale. He did not always have a cape. So, and then we're, of course, going to talk about wine and food pairings because this is Book Geeks and Wine Freaks. And I have some suggestions of some wine you might like to drink and food you might like to eat along with those wines while reading Dracula. So, first, the novel. Written in 1897. So that's the fin de siècle of the Victorian era. That means the end, or the fin de siècle of the 19th century. That means the end of the century, basically, the end of the times. And so it's right there at the dawn of the industrial age is when this novel is published. And so there's a lot of technology in this book that's really very cool. And a lot of things going on in this book that are surprising. So if you have not ever read Dracula and you've been just relying on films to understand or to see what as your interpretation or knowledge of Dracula, read the novel. It's absolutely different than the films. So how did I get interested in reading the novel Dracula? I didn't really read this novel until 1989, after right after the Francis Ford Coppola movie Dracula Love Never Dies came out. I loved that movie. The characters were the set was gorgeous. The costumes was gorgeous. Gary Oldman was wonderful. It was a great film, of course. Francis Ford Coppola made the film. So, and gosh, I know for sure, I'm not sure. I know there was a bunch of us that went to go see it, but the only person I remember for sure being there was my best friend, Ree. And then we went dancing later. So, Ree, if you're out there and you see this, remember when we went to go see that movie? That was a great movie. Anyway, so after that movie, I really wanted to decide, well, I need to read the novel Dracula because that just looks like so great. That was just amazing. And so I picked up this book, probably at the Walmart in Alvin, Texas, or the Target in Bay Area. I don't know. Anyway, pre-Barnes and Noble, by the way. Or any Amazon kind of purchases. And read this novel, and what I discovered was, wow. I was kind of disappointed, but not too much. The vampire in this novel, there's no romance between the vampire and Mina Murray / Mina Harker in this novel. The vampire in this novel is a monster. And it's a scary monster. I mean, I can only imagine what Victorians, well, actually, I don't need to imagine. I've read the newspaper articles. And then this actually has some of the newspaper reviews of what the Victorians thought about it. So wasn't really well received in its time, except for those people who were actually into sensational novel reading or thriller novel reading. And that was definitely poo-pooed back in the day of the Victorian times. Much like romance novels are today, novels in general, especially novels that were sensational, were, put down for sure. And the Victorian times. So anyway, was surprised that the movies had all been deceiving me, that the vampire is not this romantic creature who, you know, has an illicit affair with Jonathan's fiance slash wife, or who, you know, is just, you know, I don't know. Anyway, so how I discovered, the first time I saw back, we'll go to back to film and stage. So there's a lot of film adaptations of Dracula. And I think the first film adaptations I saw as a kid, somewhere in my preteen to early teenage years, was the 1979 films, Love at First Bite and the Dracula with Frank Langella in it. Or Langella, however you say his last name. I'm sorry, I'm slaughtering that, Mr. Frank. Anyway, so I don't remember which one I saw first. They were both released in 1979. I was 8, 9 years old in 1979, so I'm pretty sure I probably didn't see them at that time. Because I don't think, you know, I probably saw them more around, you know, 10, 11, no, not 10, like 11, 12, a little bit later, whenever I was, you know, staying up a little later at night and seeing these films on late night TV, right? So, because, you know, back in the day we had 3 channels, maybe 5. No, 3 channels back in the early 80s. And you just had your choices. So anyway, not like today. Anyway, I saw those 2 films and loved them both. You know, Love at First Bite is very campy. It's got George Hamilton in it, and it's just hilarious. And then Dracula with Frank Langella is just, you know, that was very romantic. And there's a lot of actually interesting film theory on written about Dracula, and including that particular film, especially with the way it was shot and the way with respect to the use of his hands. So you see this early clip, if you watch it, you can get it download on YouTube, man, and watch it for free, probably. You can see his hand, like there's a lot of his hands creeping out. And that's the thing with Dracula, that like all films, they kind of have the, you know, the hand thing. And there's an homage to the early, the first film that was a Nosferatu in 1922, with Max Schreck as Count Orlok. It's a German film, by the way, and it was unauthorized, and the Stoker Foundation, aka Mrs. Stoker, sued the producer, directors, writer of the film, and they won. And so Nosferatu, that one, you know, the film, look like that guy, that film was supposed to, all copies of that film was supposed to be destroyed. Well, of course, not all copies were destroyed as they were instructed, and we now, you know, do have that one silent film of Nosferatu, which is an unauthorized adaptation of Dracula, and they were sued for copyright infringement. And anyway, so that's a great film, though. It's fun. I like watching that one, keeping that one on in the background. It's creepy, but you know, there's that one chiaroscuro scene where it's just Count Orlok's shadow, and he's like creeping along the hallway with his hands. Well, that kind of inspired a lot of handwork in other vampire film or other Dracula films, including this one, the 1979 film with Frank Langella, and also had Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing. So you'll see a lot of hands in that. Like they focus do a lot of close-up shots of Frank's hands. So anyway, back to Dracula in film, or the romance in Dracula. So a little bit about film there. Now back to the romance, circling back to the romance. There is romance in this novel, though. Romance in this novel, and that is between Mina and Jonathan Harker. Within the first, the novel's written by a series of journal articles that start beginning with Jonathan's first entry on May 3rd, and that ends on November with Jonathan's, I think it's Jonathan's last entry, and it's November 6th. But it's a collection of different art journal and diary entries and newspaper articles during this time period that tell the story. And so the novel begins on chapter 1 with Jonathan's first journal entry. And the first journal entry we get to read from the various characters. And that is within that, the second paragraph, he's already talking about Ina. And he's already talking about food and wine. So, or food, this time food. But he does talk about wine, which is interesting. So anyway, films always seem to try to focus and twist the romance into something between the characters. Like I said earlier, if I didn't say it earlier, the vampire in this novel is a monster. He's a predator in all sense of the words. His teeth, Nina describes his being bit, his lips as reeking lips, and so that's really creepy. Chronological films. Wait, let's talk about the stage plays, because this is where Dracula gets his cape. So in 1922, you have Nosferatu, a film that's a unauthorized adaptation, film adaptation. But in 1924, we do have a stage play that is written by an Irish actor. Sorry, I'm needing to look at my notes for a second. Hamilton Dean, so that's 1924. It was also adapted by John L. Balderstone in 1927. So this is a play that was continually run and then adapted and then revised again in 1927 by a different playwright. So how Dracula got his cape. So Dracula did not start off with having a cape and being this handsome debonair gentleman that you see. Was Count Dracula, but he wasn't necessarily this debonair man that was allowed to roam about society. He was a predator, a monster. So they had to figure out on stage, how to get the vampire into the parlor, into the dinner, at the dinner table, into the entertaining parlor, into the homes of the people of the time, into the homes of the people of the time that they're trying to portray. So into their homes. And so what they had to do was, one, make him more of a gentleman, and but they also had to make him kind of pop up and appear out of nowhere in those scary scenes. And so, and as you know, in stages or theatrical productions, or you may not know this, I know this, I was in theater as a kid and, gone to a lot of performances, but there's usually a spot in the stage where there's a place where they can drop and pop up people and drop people. So can't remember what it's called right now. I know that if Gayla sees this, she's gonna she'll tell me anyway what it is called. But so anyway, they had to figure out a way to make him kind of pop up in that stage smoke and not look so weird. So Dracula got a cape because the actor could wear this cape around him and then be all black and then poof, pop up out of nowhere in the middle of the stage in front of a live audience. And that was how Dracula got his cape. So, and that just kind of carried forward for a long time until gentlemen stopped wearing capes. And but even almost every adaptation of Dracula has him in a cape, especially if it's set at some point, especially if it's set in the 19th century. So if the film is set in the 19th century. So that is my little bit of rundown of Dracula, and the disclaimer that Dracula is actually a monster in the novel, and that There is romance, though. Mina and Jonathan Harker are extremely in love. You know, 'cause he writes about her first, straight up, first off, and she's extremely worried about him while he's in Transylvania. And then when he disappears and she doesn't hear from him, she's really worried about him. And finally, when she actually goes to him, and when in Transylvania, because the nuns get him, he escapes. And then the nuns get him, and they write Mina, and she comes to get him, and she marries him on the spot. She's not letting him out of her sight again. She definitely marries him on the spot. And from that point forward, Jonathan and Mina are like this. And he actually gets really upset at the crew of Light one time. That's what the monster hunters are calling themselves. He actually gets really upset with the crew of Light because they keep they keep acknowledging that Mina's really smart and she's doing things and stuff, but and helping them because she is really smart. She's a new woman. She's what they call a blue stocking of the Victorian times, really, because she's intelligent, educated. She knows how to type. She's learning to do other things that would be helpful to support Jonathan as a lawyer. Like, she's basically trained to be his legal secretary, and has plans to do that, which is, you know, kind of new and interesting in that time. And so she's acknowledged as being intelligent and influential and helping to produce, you know, helping them to make progress with getting closer to the vampire and killing the monster. But but they keep leaving her behind. And at one point, you know, after she's attacked, basically, Jonathan just kind of puts his foot down. He's like, hey, no, we're not leaving her behind. Every time something happens, she tells us something's going to go, gives us some information, tells us what's going to go down, gives us a clue, helps us out, and we leave her behind, and then shit happens. That's not cool. We're taking her with us this time. And then finally he gets, you know, the support he needs. And then that's in a Victorian novel written by a Victorian man. So I think that's pretty interesting. Anyway, about the wine. There is mentions, of course, and they all got to eat. So one of the things that I like about this book is that Jonathan starts off the novel basically talking about food. And that's important because, well, you know, I'm going to try to pair wine with what might be, with foods that might be in this novel. So you might, or that the people in this novel might want to eat. So, tonight, just before we get started, I am drinking a little bit more of this Nest Rosé. Circle exclusive. I'll tell you more about that later. Because it's yummy. It was open in the fridge. So anyway, straight up, right in the middle of it, he talks about food, and he mentions Mina, and he does it this way. He said, I had for dinner, or rather supper, a chicken done up some way with red pepper, which was very good, but thirsty. So meaning it's spicy. Memo, it's in parentheses, memo, get recipe for Mina. Oh, and the top of the journal entry says, it's in parentheses that this journal has been kept in shorthand, which is a new thing back then and hard to learn, but very useful. So, memo, get recipe for Mina. I asked the waiter, and he said it was called paprika hendel, and that as it was a national dish, I should be able to get it anywhere along the Carpathians. That's the mountain range where Dracula's castle is located, still located today. So, anyway, so that's one and along. I like to drink with spicy food. I like to drink rosés, and like I said, I'm drinking this Nest Rosé. This is a Circle exclusive, meaning only Scout Circle members can get this. And I'm sad to say, this one sold out. So very sad to say this one's sold out because I'm gonna have to wait until the next vintage comes out, and I don't know if that could be 2021, could be a 2022. Hoping for 2021 or early 22. So anyway, love this wine. This is a very juicy, sweet wine. Priscilla, we had this one at your house the other night. Well, not the other night, a few weeks back. So this is a great wine, but members only, exclusive wine. And the reason why it's sold out is because these are small batch wines. And meaning there's only so many bottles because there's only so many grapes grown to make this wine. So that's kind of special. And so if I were going to recommend a wine, I'm gonna go ahead and screen share because I'm gonna recommend a wine. If you wanna drink a rosé, like I said, I like drinking rosés with spicy food. One of my favorite things to have rosés with is tacos. I love tacos, but I do love it to have rosé with Indian food. I'm really a big fan of rosés and curry together. So let's share my screen and I'll recommend a really cool rosé for you. Okay, so here we go. I like the Dove Hunt Dog 2020 Dove Hunt Dog Rosé. It's very, very, look in that cute bottle. It's very, it's like I said, perfect pink in color. It's refreshing. It's got notes of strawberry, blood orange, and watermelon. It's a great choice to pair with, roasted barbecue. I like it, like I said, I like rosé with spicy food, and I'd love to drink rosé with spicy curries and Indian food, or Tex-Mex food. That's just my favorite. So but Jonathan, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now so you can go back to me. So you can, okay, there you go. But however, Jonathan has a couple of different wines in his trip to the Carpathians. And the first wine he encounters is he's having a dinner of, I dined on what they call robber steak, bits of bacon, onion, and beef seasoned with red pepper and strung on sticks and roasted over the fire in a simple style of the London's cat's meat. So he's kind of comparing it to how horse meat that is fed to animals in London. So I'm not thinking he liked this meal too much. This was on his way to the castle still. He's in B Streets, I think, here. Or maybe he's gone. Oh, yeah, he is in B Streets. Anyway, the wine was Golden Mediash, which produces a queer sting on the tongue, which is, however, not disagreeable. I had only a couple of glasses of this and nothing else. So I'm thinking that queer sting is kind of maybe tart, more like maybe a Pinot Grigio or something. But I don't know. The word sting also reminds me of the weird sting that I get on my tongue when I drink grocery store white wines, or mass-produced white wines I buy by Specs. So that's not something I'm very interested in. The next, and finding, I don't know, the sting part doesn't agree with me. So we're going to move on to the next wine. The next meal Jonathan has that he talks about, and I mean, I haven't gone all the way through this book, and I actually intend to because that's really interesting to me. And all of a sudden, I have a new research project with Dracula. Is to look up all the food that they eat and the wines that they might be drinking. For myself in the book, I don't rely on the internet to find these things. Anyway, all at once, an excellent roasted. Anyway, so he's at the castle now, okay? And he's at Count Dracula's castle, so the food's getting better. All at once, an excellent roast. Wait, the Count himself came forward and took off a cover of a dish, and I fell to at once on an excellent roast chicken. This with some cheese and salad and a bottle of old Tokay. So, now a little bit about Tokay. Tokay is named after a region in Hungary called Tokay. And it's considered, this wine is considered to be one of the noblest and sweetest wines the noblest of the sweet wines in the world. So this wine is obviously a little sweet, but it also has hints of honey and caramel and nuts. Now, I know most of us out there in wine-loving land who have a little bit of a palate for wine don't necessarily like a really sweet wine. So, sorry, I need to wet my whistle. So I'm going to recommend, I'll share my screen again, this lovely Chardonnay. Okay, I'm sorry. There you go. This lovely Chardonnay, our 2020 Gallivant Chardonnay. Now this wine is a, you know, beautiful wine. Love this wine. Earthy, creamy. It's got plush pear tart, butterscotch, baking spices on a medium body frame with a bright finish. Pairs well with our meatier dishes like seafoods, chicken, and a cream sauce and polenta. 14% alcohol, and the residual sugar is 0.4 grams per liter. So wow, that's not really sweet. So this wine, this is one of my very favorite wines. I love this wine. My favorite Chardonnay because it's nice, kind of not too oaky, a little oak, but not too oaky. And it just, you really can taste that butterscotch. Just kind of, it's smooth and creamy and just, it's very silky on your tongue. I love this wine. I like to drink this wine with sushi. It's something that John and I do a lot is drink this wine with sushi, as well as just about any kind of, you know, a chicken sandwich is fine. It's just that good. And so one of the things that I think, let's talk about residual sugar. So residual sugar, what that means is that is just the sugar that's found naturally in the grapes that's left over from, left over after the wine, after the grapes have been turned into wine, basically. So a little fun fact that I think is awesome about Chardonnay is it's related to Pinot Noir. Isn't that interesting? It's a chance crossing of Pinot Noir and an obscure varietal called the Gouas Blanc, almost non-existent in France today. The most popular wine grape in the world, Chardonnay, was created. So that's kind of, the most popular wine grape in the world, and it was created from a blend of Pinot Noir and Gouas Blanc. So that's great. My goodness. Oh, for this particular wine, the grapes were, the Chardonnay grapes were hand-picked, because that's how we pick our grapes, from vines that were planted 10 to 13 years ago. So now I know some of you guys are going to want to talk about red wine, are going to want to drink a red. And so because it's Dracula and the Crew of Light is such a bold crew, I'm going to recommend a nice bold wine. Our Middle Jane 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon. I love the little dress on the bottle. I think that's adorable. I love this label. I think it's great. So anyway, and this grape is actually, this bottle, or this Sauvignon Blanc is 97% Sauvignon or Cabernet Sauvignon grapes, as well as 3% Syrah, which helps it, gives it smooth finish, man. So notes of black pepper, blackberry plum, black cherry, and espresso. A lot of flavors in this bottle. And for this, I mean, oh my gosh, I would put, this for me, I mean, you know, our sommelier recommends that we pair it with steak, roasted duck, a spicy Asian barbecue. For me, this one, all of that, and for me, I would just go straight charcuterie. I love charcuterie boards, and this is a charcuterie wine to me, with some varieties of different meats and cheeses, and you know, some you know, tangy things and some fruits, and I think that would be just wonderful. So with the charcuterie, 14.3% alcohol by volume and a residual sugar of 0.03 grams per liter. That's awesome. So I think, you know, and what that means is, let's talk about the sugar. We do not put any extra sugar whatsoever in our wines at Scout and Cellar. None. There's no extra sugar, ever. There's also no synthetic pesticides or herbicides or chemicals of any kind allowed on the grapes, on the vines, or to be put in the bottle. We don't do any food colorings, none of that stuff, no tasty things. Our CEO says, you know, if we wanted to, we could make clean crafted wine that tasted like, you know, feet and Band-Aids, but we don't. We make wine. The winery makes wine that tastes really good. That's something that I think is great. So back to Dracula. If you haven't read this novel, really need to read it, give it a chance. It's very wow, there's a lot going on, so you need to pay attention, but I like how it's broken up into journal entries, so you can just read it one journal entry at a time, or one newspaper article at a time. There's like murder, of course. The vampire is a monster. Some really great folklore about the Booper lady. I'm not going to get that right now, but you know, and some really great things going on. I liked the Norton editions. I'll tell you why, because especially when you're reading Victorian literature or historic literature of any type, because it gives you theory in the back. It gives you interesting things like, you know, reviews from the Times about the book, and it gives you a nice introduction about things. It kind of tells you what's going on in the society and the world at the time the novel was written. And to me, that's really fascinating and interesting. So read Dracula, and then watch a couple films, and let me know sometime if you want to talk about Dracula and films, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So have a good night, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode.